premises located in D3 business zone. Is that facade and lighting correct, or wasn't that the ARB that did that? No.
The ARB took care of that.
They approved that.
All right. Hi guys, how are you?
Good evening.
The record should reflect that we met with the applicant again at the work session, I think.
Yes, we did, yes.
Since then, we've come across a couple other things, and that is that the restaurant has to be limited to 150 seats. You're aware of that? I'm looking at an email. You are aware of that?
Yeah, wait a minute. Excuse me. I don't know if I have to state my name for record. David Bush, registered architect, 90 West Main Street, Bayshore, New York, representing JCL Pub. So we were made aware of that approximately at 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Okay. We didn't want to spring that on you, but you know, it's better you should know it now.
Well, 3 o'clock this afternoon was a spring.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.
That's a minor spring. The other one is the your use of a use of moving tables and things that, you know, essentially becoming a nightclub instead of a restaurant, requires a special permit from the ZBA, which you can certainly apply for. But we're granting you, if your application is approved, we're granting you a restaurant and nothing more than a restaurant. Anything else will require a special permit from the zoning board of approvals, and you can make applications. Then Carol can help you through that, and you can get that done as well. And in this way, it's all done correctly. I think that the only consideration that we had, the only issues that were concerning to us was the number of people allowed in the facility based on the zone, and also the use as a nightclub. Even though I know it's not your primary use, it's a restaurant, but just so that you can understand that we're going to be voting here tonight, if we are going to be voting here tonight in a restaurant. So you're going to have to somehow, your seating capacity for this restaurant doesn't seat 150 people. Can you seat 150 people in this restaurant right now?
Yes.
You can. How many can you actually seat?
So I think certainly a question, a point that came up this afternoon in my conversation with Peter and Carol.
Right.
The original plan submitted had seating, seats, actual physical seats of 200 persons.
Right.
And in the dialogue with Carol and Peter today, the direction to drive it towards the 150, I did make an attempt early this afternoon to put together a quick seating count to address the 150. So the plan was emailed to Sarich early this afternoon.
Right.
Does address a seating count of 150.
And I'm in possession of that. I think all board members have it, right? You know, I don't think it's fair to hold you up on coming back with a large plan, just so we can see that. But what we will hold you to is, I'm assuming that this is probably not finalized.
Well, I think it's certainly a question I have. So, and
if you want to move a couple of tables around, as long as that number equals 150, and you submit that to the building department.
Right. So
yes. And I think that'll be sufficient, so as not to have you come back here an additional month.
Right. I think that the bigger question is appreciating that the 150 seat request, if you will. When we look at the New York State Code in terms of fire limitations and stuff, and this is something we had previously discussed with the board, that two things: we had a pilot application that was submitted and reviewed for 228 persons, was the actual number. I think last number was 238. And a parking fee has been submitted against that. Secondarily, we had discussions of the New York State Code allowance, etc. And in review with Peter Sarich last week and earlier this week, prior to this item coming up, the consensus was a capacity of 255 persons. And I know that was something we were discussing during the last hearing and in the work session, etc. So the seating capacity as agreed is 150. understanding the code capacity would allow for the 255.
I think that you have the recourse to go to the zoning board of appeals and ask for a special permit, I would believe, right, counsel?
Yes.
So, I mean, you certainly have that option, and if you want, we'll refer it back to the ZBA, and if they give you that, you know, that capacity, then we'll certainly, you know,
But I
we'll
think
certainly
it's-
grant you
I
that.
think it's an.
We don't have the right, we don't have the right to do that as board. We can't exceed what our code says.
Right.
So, but you do have that recourse to go to the ZBA, and that may be something you guys want to pursue.
I think it's an important consideration because the 50 seats, if you will, going from 200 seats to 150 seats, you know, we've definitely approached this. We've had a lot of meetings with the village. We've had 2 working sessions. We've obviously been with planning, writing, et cetera. There's been a lot of review of the strategy, the parking counts, and capacities we went through last fall. So the business plan, right, to make this a successful restaurant is based on a certain seat, a certain.
I appreciate all
criteria and
that.
stuff.
I absolutely
So-
appreciate it. I apologize for the issue here, but it just kind of fell through the cracks. So I would suggest then that we just refer this over to ZBA, and if they approve it, if they approve the extra seating, they approve that to, you know, by special permit, however they have to do it, then we'll certainly, you know, seriously consider granting you the restaurant that you proposed.
Okay.
I think that's only fair. The problem is I can't do that.
Understood, understood.
So, I mean,
But-
that's your choice.
But I think one of the, I apologize, Mr. Weeks, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just have a question about the numbers you're throwing out. I just did all the addition for the original plan submitted to us. It came up with 190 seats. That was the plan we received last month. That includes the mezzanine, the bar, the lounge, everything.
Okay.
Is that what was submitted last month, was
I would
190?
say yes, it was 190, 200 seats. The plan I looked at this afternoon when Carol and Peter called me was the plan I had submitted to Peter, when I was occupant count, et cetera, was 200 seats. I physically counted them
So
myself.
that's not a plan that we've seen, it's been presented to us.
There's no change in the plan that I'm aware of, so I would like to sit down and check the seats,
Okay,
physical seats. Okay.
all right,
But
this
it-
one appears to have 190,
Okay.
and this is the revision here.
You know, we'll just dismiss we won't dismiss, we'll refer your application over to the zoning board of appeals, you make application to them. If they grant you that, we'll certainly, you know, take a look at your original plan.
So I guess one of the questions I would have is, you know, to proceed forward in that direction, the ZBA, et cetera, again, having gone through a number of milestones in front of us and stuff, you know, the proposed use, what we've been looking at, I think has all been looked at favorably. I'm gonna say relative to seating capacities and stuff, so is it something that we can have the planning board recommend to the zoning board, that as a business use, you recognize the capacity of the 200 persons as a need for the restaurant?
Mr. Chairman, the seating capacity is not anything that the zoning board can take care of.
Has to go to the big board.
It would have to be board of trustees, or they would have to modify the code and maybe perhaps allow the zoning board to give a special permit for seating in excess of 150. Now, they can issue a special permit for the nightclub use, that they can go for.
Right.
But the other portion of it, we're gonna have to talk to the village attorney and see if the board's interested in modifying that, so then we can proceed to the zoning proceeding.
In the
That's
interest
why
of
we-
fairness, we can approve your application right here tonight, if the board so wishes, for the 150 seat.
Right.
And you can pursue the additional capacity. And we could do that while you're, you know, now I understand you have a business model that you have to deal with, I understand. But we're limited to what we can do. We're willing to do what we can do to help you. And at this stage, we're limited to that.
May
So, I mean, that's really your choice.
Okay, so might I ask, I just want to be clear, Carol, what you just mentioned. So the seating capacities of Board of Trustees, what is the,
All right, the seating
What is the
capacity,
process?
it states under D3, you cannot have more than 150. So what Peter and I were talking about is possibly bringing up to the Board of Trustees where the code could be modified to allow the zoning board to issue a special permit for seating in excess of 150. I don't know if that'll happen, but we're going to proceed, Peter and I, to bring that up to the board to see if that's a possibility.
so,
As it stands today, there is no allowance for it.
So if that, you know, so, I'm just trying to understand process and timeframe, and respectfully here. So, because again, we did start this process with the village and overlap with these discussions last fall. So if we go before, the process would be to make an application and a submission to the Board of Trustees,
No.
or does the village do that?
There would be a resolution brought before the Board of Trustees with a public hearing, change the village code to allow the ZBA to issue the special permit. It would not be your initiation, it would not be our initiation.
Okay.
The village board would have to approve that change to the village code on their own.
Okay.
Then after that, if the board were to look favorably on that and approve the code change, then you could make application to the ZBA for a special permit to allow the excess seating.
So.
So we're talking several months, assuming that it would go ahead.
Right, and the reality of that is probably, and I appreciate that, right, that's probably, the reality is probably a year-long process to get through that.
Not necessarily.
Certainly
If it's
6
something that
months.
the village board is receptive to,
Mhm.
they're gonna hold a public hearing on any change of the village code. So, I mean, you know, there's gonna be some time involved, and it's, you know, it's going to require, you know, them to make that change.
Right.
And then at that point in time, you can then put in your application to the zoning board of appeals.
Are there any other situations, beyond this use, this restaurant, et cetera, with it, that, I'll say demanding or commanding, whatever the proper word is, a similar special use application through the Board of Trustees, where the point being that the village is gonna consider, so the village is currently considering, as opposed to this is the start of an action. I guess, like, candidly, has the village been talking about making this increase, or this is the first time it's come up?
The first time it's come up, to my knowledge. You're blazing a new trail.
I guess, so seating and special use, Board of Trustees action, et cetera, a lengthy process and no guarantee, right? Because it's kind of a new,
Like I said this afternoon, Peter and I are gonna go talk to the powers that be, about the situation that you're in and what's going on. If it's something that they're interested in doing, they can set a public hearing.
We can set a public hearing at one meeting for the next
Like
meeting.
one meeting for the following meeting,
And
might be
then-
the end of August.
Possibly decide that night, possibly reserve decision and issue it.
They have to have a public hearing, but,
Right.
if they decide to make a decision, you can be here as early as September.
60 days.
And you need to go to zoning board, you can probably do both at one time, 2 special permits.
when you say, I'm sorry, two
One
special.
would be for the nightclub and one would be for the, seating in excess of 150.
Okay.
Assuming they'll want to proceed in that direction, but it's possible.
Understood. I guess that's the second piece of the puzzle, right? That, you know, the clients have been applauded for speaking candidly and openly what the intent is. There's been no wool over the eyes, et cetera. Certainly use the ability to kind of clear the center area, to entertain, back to the definition of kind of nightclub versus, you know, dance space, et cetera. So certainly I have to, pose the question because again, it's new, you know, again, appreciating what's in village code, everything else was brought to our attention today at 3 o'clock. That's the reason we've gone to prior work sessions to try to vet through some of this.
Right.
So, is the proposed use what's been described in the prior work sessions and the prior planning board session, the collapsing of tables, creating an area? Is it is it even viable to think that the board is gonna consider the proposed use, or are they gonna hold in place the restaurant only? And, I apologize, but at this point I really need to ask for, I don't know how else to do this, but, we're at a point in terms of investment, the owners are, where, the business model is falling apart, at the 23rd and a half hour, so they kind of where do they go from here? And so the question is, the viability of that outcome for the proposed use, understanding some of the other ongoings in the village.
Well, I don't have a crystal ball.
Understood.
I can only say this, that the village of Patchogue is friendly to business on one hand. On the other hand, it's not like the town, or that you may be familiar with, where you could get lost and you're gonna find out right away exactly what their feelings. They're they're not gonna jerk anybody around, for want of a better word here. They're gonna let you know up front, you know, pretty much how they feel about that. That being said, this is brand new territory. I have not had the ability to chat with anybody, because we typically don't talk to them about any application, that unless it's something like this that goes beyond our, you know, our capability. So, you know, if we sat, if I was asked my opinion, I would say the building certainly is big enough to handle a larger, you know, crowd, but there are other considerations that we don't make those decisions on. So I can't sit here today and say, yeah, it's gonna fly. I can't say that.
I would add one thing. I think if the village board decided to put people to go forward on the agenda, that would be a positive sign.
Yeah.
It's a text amendment. They have absolute discretion whether to do it or not. So if they felt negative, they would pursue it. So you would know in a shorter amount of time.
Okay.
You could file to the zoning board one way or the other without the additional seats for the additional uses in that club, if you want it. You could file that application while you're waiting on the village, but then if the village adopted the code amendment as being discussed, you have to make a second trip. But you could do that at any time. You don't have to wait.
No, I appreciate that. So, and that's where we're in this funny, precarious, you know, predicament, right? It truly is a catch-22 in terms of business model and the success of the business, right? One of the things we don't want to do, any of us here, the owners nor the village, is put the investment into the building and the business fails, and we have a board up building again. So, with the money and expenditures and so I think, and where again, appreciating the letter of the code and stuff, that was the reason for some of the informal work sessions. We're at a point where now we very much appreciate the time and effort that the planning board put in, and the fact that there's a consideration to get an approval for the 150 seats. But if the business model doesn't work, I don't know what to do with that approval.
I mean,
So,
I can't change.
no, I understand.
The code report, the planning board doesn't have jurisdiction to give you.
I understand. I completely understand. It's kind of from.
And the best thing I can say is that an approval is better than not an approval. Although that may not be maybe a small comfort to you, because if it doesn't work for your business plan, then 150, then,
Right.
you know, it is what it is.
So I don't know.
You'll need the approval eventually anyway. And
No, I
it would help
understand.
your
We have to come
situation
back.
It would help your situation with the trustees of the zoning.
Well, does, so the ZBA, or the application, right, for the nightclub use, the Board of Trustees, back to that process and timeframe. So the potential is, let's say within 2 months, there's a text change for the Board of Trustees, and there's an action by the ZBA to get things approved, right? How can I get I need to get a pulse on that?
Well, I can tell you, you're not gonna fall through the tracks. You're gonna get a yes or a no pretty quick.
Right. So,
If the trustee, I think you'll know relatively soon whether the trustees are interested in pursuing it or not. At that point, you can still make the ZBA filing with the 150 seat limit if you want.
right.
That's up to you.
Is that a meeting I can have, say later this week or early next week that with the Board of, how do I, what's the
Peter and I
temperature?
have to go to the mayor and the village attorney.
Mhm.
We have to bring to the table and explain what's going on, to see if they're interested in pursuing this. If they are, I'll have a better feel definitely by the end of the week, hopefully by tomorrow or Thursday, from village attorney, if they're gonna go ahead and set a public hearing. But anything, if they're interested, it's a good possibility that everything will go through, but there's always a chance that it doesn't, depending on public input, and, there's no answer that we can, no definitive answer that we can give on that.
Understand the text amendment applies to the whole zoning district, not just you.
100% appreciate that,
So that there could be, the board could have concerns
yeah.
that even if it works for you, it may not be something they want to proliferate.
And I
Because
think,
it may,
yeah.
other people may be interested, oh wow, now you can have more than 150, the parking issues, there's a lot to.
I think exactly, and that's one of the, the things that I think is difficult, because when we looked at capacities, relative, we looked at capacities relative to parking, and that parking fee was based on 228.
Right.
So there's an assumption there relative to capacity. So we're looking at a seating plan of 200. And I appreciate everything in terms of letting the code and stuff, but that's why back to kind of driving some of the process and the informal work session, all of a sudden, it's, you know.
Because the seating capacity and Peter's
Fire code
occupancy
is
according to the state code is different, that's why.
Right.
It's always gonna be hard, even if you have standing people, your occupancy can be 228 people.
So I guess that's a question, right? So if the plan tonight is reviewed and considered for 150 seats, and I'm gonna say that the fire code allows for 255
Not seats, but people.
people.
Yes.
And that has been in direct review with, I'll say, New York State code officials, as well as the village code official. That's we can have 250 people sitting and the other people standing around. Is that an accurate?
150.
150 people sitting, yes, that's correct.
And the other people standing around. So it's really
You can't
limitation of seats. Is
yeah.
that correct?
Right, but why would it be standing around in a restaurant, which is the
Well,
other half of the piece?
That's exactly one of the funny pieces about it. Like, it makes more sense to have more seating, because then it maintains that restaurant atmosphere.
Yeah,
So
well,
it's
no
certainly
question
a
about that, the
catch-22.
size of the building and
Yeah.
everything else, it lends to that kind of capacity. Unfortunately, we're
Right.
hemmed in by the zone, so,
Okay.
it's, yeah, I understand, you're in a bad place.
And if in fact it goes before the village board, and when the mayor asks for people to speak in favor or against the changes to the village code, that is a point you can very easily make.
Right.
And when you go to the Board of Appeals, the Board of Appeals, appeals is right in there, that's a point you can make to them. But again, as the chairman said, it's not within our purview to make that.
I very much appreciate that. Again, just trying to get a measure on the temperature with the.
And then you have an approval from the Architectural Review Board at this point. I think that you would easily have an approval for 150 seats from this board. That might give you some strength moving forward in your process as well.
Yeah. We're ready to move ahead with your application tonight. Unfortunately, we're hampered to hold the total number of seating to 150.
So,
I mean, you know, we like what you guys are gonna do, it's gonna be a beautiful job, a beautiful, you know, place.
Right.
You know,
So-
we wanna see you be successful, but I understand your business model, I understand that, but that's something we can't
Right.
address.
And it's right back to, you know, being open about things and what's gonna work in terms of a business model. So again, I appreciate the candid dialogue. So again, if it's 150 seats and we have a capacity of the building code, at 255, right? We're in agreement on those two capacities.
Well, we don't set that, that's set by the fire marshal.
In other words, if,
We don't set that, that's like the thing on the wall over there.
No, I.
Occupancy in this room, you know, cannot exceed,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
if you
That's a fire
have
code issue.
150 people sitting, and your bar is crowded, and there's a lot of people standing around the bar during the time you're serving dinner, and the fire marshal goes in there, and they do a head count, you can still have your 228 people total.
Right.
Just you won't have more than 150 seats.
Exactly. I think that's the point that I wanted to get to, is that, you know, 'cause
But then again, that makes people standing to be able to mock it.
Of
well,
course,
no, and we
but-
don't want it. Nobody wants that.
Right.
Nobody wants that. But I think I need to get an
But this
understanding
was-
of where we are today,
Right.
right? So,
That's pretty much, that's where you're at.
okay. Right.
And I think it was well put that, you know, the village board's gonna have to consider the entire D3 business zone and say, how is this going to impact a lot of things?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they may feel very sympathetic towards your application or your wish to get, you know, some relief through a special permit or whatever. But, you know, obviously if they grant that to you, if they grant that to the zone or they change that code, then that becomes available to anyone else to make that application. So there's grander things to consider than James Joyce. I mean, not for you guys, it's the only thing to consider, but for the village board, they have bigger fish to fry perhaps. I don't know.
We appreciate that. We do. And I appreciate the opportunity for this.
Do you want to take a couple of minutes to go chat with your client out in the hall and come back and tell us what you want to
Do
do?
you guys have any
We'll
direct
grant you
questions?
that.
Do you want to chat a little bit?
I just have one question. Colin Ash, 3 Country View Lane, East Islip.
Yes, sir.
We certainly wouldn't describe ourselves as a club, but we do hope to have, you know, music and people dancing.
Yeah.
What is it, I guess, that the village doesn't want. If,
Well, it's just that if you're a restaurant, you're a restaurant. If you're a club, you're a club. If you're going to be a club after certain hours or whatever it's gonna be, you need to have that, you need to have that, right and permission to do that. As it stands, as a restaurant, you don't have the right and permission to do that.
It's not that the clubs are completely prohibited, but you have to go to zoning board of appeals.
Right, you need a special permit to have a nightclub.
But you said nobody else has ever dealt with this before, so there's never been a special permit issued before, correct?
No,
no,
not with a
Okay,
nightclub,
I-
with excess seating of 150, that hasn't been done.
Right.
The
It's not
nightclub,
the
there
nightclub
are,
thing.
there are some, the Emporium's a nightclub,
The
they
seating
have a
issue,
special permit.
But we're not like, we're not the, no offense to the Emporium, we're not the Emporium.
No, I understand,
Right.
but
If
their
you're the
original
Emporium,
intent
believe me, you'd be in
was,
big trouble.
Okay.
their
Right.
original intent was they did start out with some catering, they had a small restaurant area, and then we were gonna do the nightclub scene. That since changed, but that's how they started, and they were issued a special permit. So, anybody that wants to be a nightclub needs a special permit.
And even though it's a part-time nightclub, it's still a nightclub. And to have it right, and to have it as of right use, to have it done and correct, then that's the way it has to be. Because I posed those questions,
that is another question that we had.
You said you had one question. Okay.
How do we partly, where do we fall under the definition of nightclub, I guess? When do we become a nightclub? as
When you
far as
move
the-
tables and you have music.
I think they're looking at the definition of.
So I know it says, dancing is really one, and or dancing, and,
I've never been in an Irish bar where somebody didn't break into a dance.
well, that's my point. And I think that's exactly my point, that, you can not have a band, you can not have a DJ, and you can have a jukebox, and there's gonna be people dancing. So by definition of the village code there, it constitutes a nightclub.
And they write the code.
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't here last month when you came before the board, but my personal concern is that, to me, this kind of is what that place in Blue Point, I'm not saying that that's what you're looking to do, but with that restaurant Blue, it was a restaurant, 10 o'clock, tables went away, everything changed, it became a nightclub, and there were numerous problems, and they got shut down. That's my personal concern, and then you open up the precedent for other, maybe not people with the same type of, you seem like you want to do the right thing, have a nice establishment, but not everybody has that mindset. I guess that's my concern, but I understand.
We're not questioning your
Right.
business prowess at all. We know you run a good, clean organization up there in Holbrook. And we've asked, and we know you're going to try to do the right thing here. We just need to do it right. We're kind of hemmed in by our own code sometimes, and for good reason.
And I wasn't, so which building is it exactly?
It's part of what used to be Jay's Fabrics.
Okay.
Right beside the new sushi place.
Okay, and then John, I just heard Mr. Chairman say that you have one in Holbrook?
We have at the Irish Times Pub in Holbrook, we've had it for almost 17 years.
That's up on Waverly, right?
It's on Main Street.
On Main Street.
Main
They
Street,
don't
okay.
like Kelly.
Yeah, I was
You
just
know where
curious.
it is.
Madam.
If I may, I was just looking at the definitions of nightclub and bar, because you were asking what constitutes a nightclub, and I would think it'd be worth looking at the definition of bar as well, because there's a provision there that says if you are gonna relocate temporarily or permanently tables, that transforms a bar into a nightclub.
Okay.
So that would fall in the nightclub definition.
So I think you could deal with that through the zoning board of appeals. Okay. I think they have precedent to allow that. Okay, I can't speak for them, of course, but, and I think the other thing you have to take up, like Carol will have a chat with the powers that be and see which direction you want to go with it. If you guys want to take 5 minutes or so to confer, we'll move on to some other business, and then you can come back in or tell us what you want to do. If you want us to just adjourn your application, pending further information, if you want us to move on it, we can approve it for 150.
Give us a few minutes.
Yeah, take your time.
Thank you.
We have other business to deal with, okay?
Chairman, I believe the procedure here,
You guys, we have your motion tabled, right? We have the application tabled. You want to come back and address the board with anything?
Yes,
Just
so,
hang on, we'll just reopen the hearing.
motion to reopen here.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's okay. Good.
thank you for reopening here. So it's David Bush again. So we've just reviewed things, and I think, we looked at the proposal of 150 seats and what's been submitted to the one application, and we are willing to, recognize that if the board's willing to recognize that 150 seats. The second, important part is the recognition of the New York State code allowance, overlap with the village building official, et cetera, and that capacity of the 255, understanding that there's been a parking review pileup of 228. But the point being that capacity within the building, needs to recognize that 225, 255, then the seating of the 150 is certainly reasonable.
Well, we don't recognize that, nor non-recognize it. That's something that the fire marshal sets. So that has nothing to do with this board. We can't set capacity.
Okay.
Your pile-up will still be what it is, because you still have a capacity of 255 people.
Right,
But the seats, right now, as it stands with the 150 seats.
agreed.
So no folding chairs in the basement.
No, I can't promise I won't do one, but no capacity for it should. All right, is that?
Yeah.
And we, secondarily, Carol, I would like to follow up with the overlap with the village and the zoning board.
I'll try to touch base with them tomorrow.
So in the matter of JCL Pub, 49 South Ocean Avenue, seek permission to open 150-seat restaurant as amended tonight before the planning board on motion. Oh, public. Gentlemen, have a seat. Mr. Boja, thank you. I forgot you were there, John, I apologize.
I'm Jackie Madison Street. Well, this is certainly a result I hadn't expected to talk about. I didn't talk about this the last time. Well, I wish I did have a fortune-telling ball to look at, because the decision about, first of all, I think these guys should take the 150. That's the first thing. I'm in agreement with that. I don't know what's going to happen to them in the future. That's their decision, and they're going to have to figure out what they can do with that. Because as you know, we have two things going on in the village right now. We have a very pro-business administration. If the Village Board of Trustees wanted to ban nightclubs, they would have done so long ago. They've been asked to impose moratoriums that consistently refuse to do so. So the political climate is certainly in favor of a club. And these special requirements that not necessarily go along with it. On the other hand, the gentleman should understand is there was a video of this preceding the last time. We had tremendous response from the community. Most of it was against a nightclub, because there's another element going on in this community, as you all know. The saturation level has been reached, many people feel. So these people will have to consider going forward these two different elements.
That's a business issue.
Correct.
And when the saturation level is reached, the strong will survive, right? It's like the survival of the fittest. And there's more to come. As I've made that statement, that there's at least another 8 that I'm aware of in the pipeline. And certainly, if it's a permitted use in a district, we're gonna do what we can to have things as proper as possible, but it's kind of hard to say no. However, as we all know, that the laws of natural selection sometimes take over.
Right. And people are going to find that statement you just made kind of frightening, to tell you the truth, that there are 8 nightclubs in the pipeline.
Not necessarily nightclubs,
Not
restaurants.
Restaurants.
Yeah, not nightclubs.
I know the
If there are 8
philosophy.
nightclubs in the pipeline, I'd be resigning.
I know the philosophy of your philosophy in this board is basically let the free market dictate.
Well, the free market will dictate it, we're short a master plan in the village. If we
Correct.
had a master plan, then perhaps there'd be something to hang our hat on. But since there is no master plan that's been done in the last 35 years, I guess,
Right.
there is none. So market forces are what made America great, and it will continue to do so.
All right, I think the decision to take the 150 is a good idea, to move forward with all these very complicated things. But my pitch actually wasn't gonna be about those things. My pitch was gonna be about something else, which is, I don't believe we have a community benefit standard here in the village. Is that correct? Where when a developer comes in, they have to actually try to do something for the community, like they do in Hempstead and other communities?
There certainly have been projects where
They had to.
they've had to do something
Okay.
to benefit.
So let's, so in this case, I don't know whether you can stipulate it, I'm just making a point to these general owners. They could do something for the community as well. I know they're paying pilot fees and they got other expenses, but there's a park next door to them that needs help. There's a mural that needs to be refurnished. There's plantings that need to be done. Our village is overwhelmed with the expenses of these things that get done willy-nilly. It would be good if a business adopted, I think it's Furman Park. It would be, and that place is going to be used by the customers of this business because it's right next door. It could benefit from a business owner looking out for that park by contributing for plants, helping that mural, the old mural that's fading away, maybe to contribute to its restoration. In terms of safety, maybe these gentlemen would wish to contribute to the village's fund for surveillance cameras, because we certainly need them all over the village. And we're going to need more of them when this club comes in, simply because it's hundreds of more people, for no other reasons than that.
You know, what's being looked at, and I think what makes perfect sense, is that, and especially I know this is being done in the city quite a bit, I know there's been discussing it out here, that the sharing of surveillance cameras, the ability to bring them back to one central place or something of that nature, that the ability for public safety to have access to those, even though maybe they're not specifically put up for public safety's use, but obviously they work that way, that they can be used. I know that's something, that's a project that's been undertaken.
Right, well, I think that Dennis has been running that through the BID,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking about some other things. That parking lot, which is the Church Street parking lot, is the most notorious parking lot now in the village. You look at those accounts from the Long Island Advance, assaults, robberies, assaults. So anything they could do as a community benefit to improve security would be beneficial, and they should contribute. People get drunk. They're gonna get drunk at this club, they get drunk everywhere. They pull plants out of the planters. You know, there are limits to what the village can do. So, and a person's coming along looking for some, favor, might want to make a community benefit contribution of these different kinds. I wish the village could have naming rights and they could name this the James Joyce, Square instead. That
Don't
would
tell it to
be
Mr.
good.
Furman. You tell it to Mr. Furman, he'll be here, it'll take a couple of hours, actually.
Right,
Please don't.
I don't think that will occur, but that would be wonderful because these gentlemen then would have and James Joyce is a historical figure. It would be something kind of cool and interesting if that space was used, not just for gardens, but for other stuff connected to that man. Anyway, that's my point, is that we get these developers come in, there are quality of life impacts. Sometimes just doing a little bit would help in the future for the village. So that's all I'm suggesting to these guys. Thanks.
You guys have any comments about that? You realize that he's talking about the little spot, of course, right next to the Chinese restaurant, directly across the street.
Yes, I do. So I think I appreciate the commentary, beautification. We have a building which is vacant. It's been vacant for over 8 years. They're making substantial investment, improvement into the building, et cetera, the facade, refreshing Main Street, they get an impact parking fee, et cetera. So there's already a substantial commitment within the neighborhood. I just think we have to be careful that we don't overcommit, in particular some of the smaller businesses that are looking for things. If this was a 120-unit development, residential development, or some other bigger building construction, et cetera, I appreciate the scenario, but I want to be very careful what is suggested relative to members of JCO.
I just want to interject quickly. I don't know if anybody else here owns a business. I don't think people realize that businesses pay a pretty hefty tax to BID.
Yes.
And that's
Who's supposed
what
to be
that's
doing it?
supposed to be going for, is the maintenance of aesthetics, planters, parks,
Exactly.
that sort of things. It's a hefty tax. Having said that, I know we've done this in the past, but usually it's with tremendously large developments where, as almost like, in exchange to giving, say, additional density than what we like to give, you can give back and help with the local park. That's been done. So there is precedent for this. But the bid tax, quite frankly, is meant to cover this sort of thing. It's not to say that certainly volunteers couldn't contribute to beautify local squares and parks, but
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But I think also that, being a good neighbor, that you'll obviously work to police the area, pick up any drunks, etc. Bottles, cans, things in front of your building. Which
Absolutely.
won't
I mean-
necessarily come from your building, but
It's part of being a good neighbor.
Yeah, and I have to agree that the facade improvements in the front of the building and the back of the building are definitely going to improve the area.
it's definitely needed.
And as I said, your branding is fantastic.
Actually, I'm sorry, can I ask the board a question? Because I'm just a little baffled by something. Sorry, my name is Rocco, 19 Trailblazer Court, Holbrook. What is the board's definition of a club? And how many clubs do you feel like?
It's not our definition, it's in the code that you're reading yourself.
we didn't.
What?
I think it's a new point right now. It says EDA.
No, I get that, but how many feel that you have, everyone's talking about all the clubs that are already in Patchogue. How many feel that the businesses that are currently operating are actually clubs?
Probably most.
So you think most of them are clubs?
I think they turn into that.
Okay,
Certainly a half dozen at least.
okay.
Most of the larger ones.
I was trying to figure out in my head, because I don't feel like we're a club. We're an Irish pub. And again,
No, I understand that. But understand that, we're looking at the strict definition of what it says.
sure.
So,
I have it right here.
you wanna read it?
Sure.
Go ahead, feel free.
Nightclub or cabaret, an establishment primarily engaged in the sale and service of alcoholic beverages for on-premises consumption, subject to the regulatory authority of the New York State Liquor Authority, and consisting of one or more of the following characteristics: age restrictions or cover charges for admission, hours of operation which extend beyond the normal dining times for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and dancing to music. The accessory or incidental sale of food or snacks shall not entitle such a use to be considered a restaurant or a bar or tavern under the provisions of this code.
Appreciate that.
So, once you shut down a restaurant,
Right.
you become a nightclub. So, yeah, you'll be a nightclub. You'll be a bar and a nightclub. And, you can petition the ZBA to give you that relief. And you can petition the village board to give you the relief from the rest of the capacity you're looking for.
I don't think anyone here is questioning your motives or your plan.
Right.
We are trying to work with you, but we're limited in terms of what we can do as per the code of the village.
Sure, I think more than anything, I'm just trying to get a heartbeat on possibly going forward, taking it forward. And just, if the village itself, because of the precedence that's been set by maybe a few other businesses already, are really held to a higher standard now because of that maybe we can't meet.
No,
I wanna meet it.
We're holding you to the standard.
Right.
We're not holding you to any higher standard.
And everyone else is held to that standard as well.
Sure. But I mean, in the honesty, in candor, the thing is, if the situation has been created by somebody else coming in, you're going to be a little more leery of them. When myself, Colin, and Johnny opened up Holbrook, it had been a nightclub before, and it was the true definition of a nightclub. We had to go to the town of Islip, and there was meetings back and forth. A lot of the residents didn't want us there, so they took a lot of us going to literally knocking on their doors, shaking everybody's hand to let them know, this is what we do. We're not a nightclub, this is what we do. So we went through this already. I guess what I'm trying to get a heartbeat on is are we, because of some of the existing businesses in Patchogue, I'm not trying to say anything bad about anybody.
We're not prejudicing your application in any way, shape, or form. We're handling it to the letter of the law.
Right.
So the answer to you is simple. We will approve a restaurant. If you want the nightclub status, you have to go to the zoning board of appeals, and if they issue that permit, you got it.
Right.
Secondary to that, as far as the rest of the capacity is concerned, if we can get that, if the village board is willing to entertain that, then you can have that as well. We're not telling you you can't or you can't, or you can't or you shouldn't.
Right.
We're acting without prejudice here whatsoever, and just acting on what's before us and what we're able to do.
Right. No, I don't believe you are. I'm just, again, maybe I'm just trying to get a beat on
Yeah.
But the overall for Patchogue,
I think
what's
you're
gone from 2 as
You're
well.
looking for something that this board doesn't have the ability to give you, which
Right.
is an understanding of whether the project as it's fully conceived is gonna wind up getting approved.
Sure.
The planning board has jurisdiction over the restaurant up to 150 seats, that's it. So other boards have to act for you to get the whole process, the whole project through. There's nothing that this board can say
Right.
about what those other boards will do. For better or worse, splitting the jurisdiction between zoning boards and planning boards and village boards was out of state of New York, set this off about.
Sure.
Anything other than that would be in my opinion, and I don't have an opinion on any pending application before any other board. I can't have it. I may have one, but I can't tell you what it is.
Sure.
It's that simple.
Right. It's just, we're 3 small businessmen who've invested money in this, the project already, and
And we're very well aware of that, and that's why we're willing to do what we're gonna do tonight.
I'll say no more, appreciate your time.
Good move.
But I'm the one that knows, so I'm sorry.
I think that's what your architect was trying to tell you before. But that's okay.
An Irishman who knew when to stop talking, that's very good.
I'm sorry?
An Irishman who knew when to stop talking, that's very good.
I'm still talking to my head.
Thanks for that.
Mr. Weeks.
Mr. Chairman, in the matter of JCL Pub Inc., 49 South Ocean Avenue, which seeks permission to open a restaurant in the D3 business zone, I would move that the application be approved as submitted with the following stipulations: that the seating for the restaurant shall be limited to 150 as per current village zoning code, and furthermore, that the proposed after-hours use as a nightclub shall be subject to the zoning board of appeals process for a special permit.
Motion by Mr. Weeks. Can I get a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations, gentlemen. Good luck with the rest of your application.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to the Village Board.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There being no more business before the board, well, Carol, we do have that one letter. Do I need to read that into the record?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
If you want to close it, we can do it quick.
All right, so let's, yeah, the application is closed. Let's adjourn, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn the meeting.
Get a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So carried. Thank you, one and all.